Wow, no, that's so long.
That's a pretty long time, isn't it? All right, guys, this Google tells us that we're live. So welcome to this week's Tea Time. We actually have a few presenters, so I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure if we have Tim on. I know he's on, and he's going to talk about some JS, and then we're going to have Kevin talk about his latest project. I'm not going to spoil that for you, and then we're going to have presentation by Paul, who's a frequent speaker here. So I think at the very least, I want to make sure Paul is here and maybe Tim and Le. That's Mason, right? That's you, right, Mason? Yes, sir. All right, awesome. So if anyone knows the status of Paul or maybe Tim on the engaged team, we can reach out to them and get them in here. We can give them this link so that they can hop in here. Since we do have Kevin on, and you know what, I do see a few new people. So I mean, Tea Time is about like interacting and sharing your technology, and it's a boss-approved opportunity where we can get together and have fun on a Friday during work hours. So that's awesome. Sometimes we get to leave early, but if we can, we try to pack it with presentations and as much knowledge as possible. So, is this how you say your name, Nikita? Is that it?
Uh, yes, Nikita.
Oh, Nikita, Nikita, right?
Nikita. Yes.
Oh, Nikita. Okay, I like the way
Yeah.
that's pronounced.
Yes,
Cool,
spell
man.
it right.
Nikita. So, you're a dev, right? Or
No, I was actually switched to platform team from the automation.
oh, you're on automation team and you're
Mm-hmm.
switched to platform. Okay, man. All right. Well, welcome aboard, man. Good to have you.
Thanks.
And then we have James. Hey, James. How's it going?
Pretty good. It's Friday.
It is Friday. So you're a dev too, right?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
mostly working on mobile stuff.
Oh, this is James Van Dyne.
Yeah,
Okay. You look is that an outdated picture?
no, it was taken in April.
Okay. Now I know how you really look.
Yeah, I shaved my beard. I usually grow it out once a
Oh,
year.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right, awesome. So if anyone can get in contact with Paul or Tim, you can shoot them this link. If not, we'll go ahead and start things off with you, Kevin.
Okay. I don't know how to set myself as the presenter. I don't know if you do that or I do that or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's just pretty much a screen share, and everybody else would just mute. So yeah, so on the left-hand panel, the second icon is a green one. You'll see an option to share the screen,
Okay.
and we'll let you know when we see it. Yep,
Okay.
we see it.
Okay, cool. All right, so I don't have any slides. I didn't prepare any presentations or anything like that. I'm horrible about setting aside time for that kind of thing. So, but I do have the internet, and I'll bring up some things in the browser as I talk, and I'm just going to kind of wing this. So Rob asked me to last week. He asked me to present at Tea Time on what I was doing that week. So last week I was in San Francisco attending a meeting of a group called TC39. So TC39, this is a page that describes, it's kind of like the official page that describes what TC39 is. So the scope of it's a standards. Well, ECMA is a standards organization. They manage international standards, and TC39 is a technical committee that's a part of ECMA. So the scope of this technical committee is standardization of the general purpose cross-platform vendor-neutral programming language that is ECMAScript, and a bunch of other stuff there. So ECMAScript is the official name for JavaScript. And so TC39 meets, currently they're meeting every 2 months, and the companies that are ECMA members will send representatives. Member companies of ECMA include, big companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter's on there, Yahoo's on there, a few others. So they'll send representatives to this meeting, and during the face-to-face meeting, it's kind of like a mixture of application development people and language designers and academics and things like that. So over the course of 3 days of face-to-face meeting, they'll discuss their progress on new features that are being added to the language, or the status of the current draft or whatever of the next version of the language. So this time, most of the time spent at the meeting last week had to do with finalizing ECMAScript 6, finalizing ES6. ES6 is scheduled to ship, meaning the specification is scheduled to be done and signed off on and everything by June of this year. And that seems like a long time away, but you have to take into account any bugs that might be in the spec language, fleshing those out, and then giving the member companies time to sort of give their stamp of approval to it. So there's a bunch of legal stuff around that takes time. So this was like the last face-to-face meeting where changes could be made to the specification. So this is what the spec looks like. This is an HTML version of the current draft, and it's big. So here's a table of contents that goes on and on and on. But interestingly, I mean, if you're ever interested and you want to look at what the spec actually says about, say, promises, you can actually go in here, and it's not too hard to. So here we go. The promise constructor. The promise constructor is the promise intrinsic object and the initial value of the promise property of the global object, blah, blah, blah. And then it gives detailed specification for all the algorithms that comprise any observable behavior for the language. So in this case, what we're looking at is the behavior of the promise constructor when you create a new promise. And you can see it's kind of in this weird prose. And it takes a little bit of getting used to. You can see step 6 here. It says set promises, promise state, internal slot depending. So there's some spec internal like language and conventions and models that you have to internalize before you can just read it and make sense of it. But once you get used to it, it really does make sense, and it's like reading the code of any language you might be used to. So last week, a lot of the discussion revolved around classes in ES6. So classes are a new feature of ES6. Let's see if I can bring up an online REPL. Right, so I'll try and blow this up just a little bit. So you can create classes, and then those classes can have methods like that, and then the constructor you specify with a constructor method like that. And classes are meant to be subclassable, so you can add an extends clause. So in here we would say class C extends D. Classes have been part of the ES6 spec for a long time now, like a couple of years maybe. And when they were added, the whole idea behind classes was that it was just sugar, just syntactic sugar for the typical JavaScript pattern of creating a function, which is a constructor, and then adding a bunch of things onto the prototype to make a sort of pseudo, class that way. Originally it was the class syntax was designed to be just syntactic sugar over that. But an interesting problem came up, and it was never resolved. The problem has to do with subclassing built-ins. So in addition to wanting to subclass other user-defined classes, we also want to be able to extend the built-in JavaScript classes. So that would be like array. So you might want to have, my array extends array. And it just turned out that the way it was designed into the spec, subclassing built-ins was just not going to fly with the JS engine implementers. And I could go into why that is, but I probably don't have enough time, and it wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to make very good sense of it anyway. So, but the general idea is that it wasn't going to work, so it had to be redesigned. And so this meeting was going over the redesign and ironing out a few minor points, and then going through a couple of other minor little points with ES6 and wrapping them all up and sort of tying a nice little bow on it. Let's see, what else? So I'm going to jump over to talking about 6-5 since I'm in the 6-5 REPL here. You can see I've got this REPL going, and on the left-hand side I'm putting in ES6 syntax, and then on the right-hand side it's spitting out some JavaScript, ES5 JavaScript. So 6-5 is a project that has really taken off in the last couple of months. It's become kind of like the what's called it's a transpiler. So it compiles ES6 into ES5, hence the name 6-5, and it's kind of become the transpiler of choice for people looking to start writing ES6 in their production code bases. So let's go look at GitHub. So here's the 6-5 GitHub page, and you can see it's got like 2,500 stars here. So I hate the whole star thing, but that kind of gives you an indication that people are gravitating toward this project, and they've got a pretty good website. So if you're interested in the possibility of writing ES6 today, then you might want to check out this website. It's just 6to5.org. Let's see. Yeah, they have a nice website, typical, pretty and all that stuff. So let's see what else. 6-5 is big. Yeah, so I mentioned that the ES6 would be it would be done. As far as the specification language goes, it would be done by June. But of course, that doesn't mean that ES6 features would be in browsers by June. Some are in there now, and some will take a long time. Here is the this is ChromeStatus.com, and it shows you the features, the status of features that are going into that are going into Chrome. So you can see I filtered it for the JavaScript things, and you can see a bunch of these ES6 features, and you can look at where they are. So arrow functions, really cool. They're in development, so they're not in any shipping version of Chrome yet. But if you go down here, template strings, they are enabled in Chrome 41. So right now, I believe I'm running Chrome 40. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I'm running Chrome 40. So in however long it takes for them to get 41 into the stable channel, which would be a few weeks perhaps, template strings will be available to use, at least in this browser. Of course, that doesn't mean you can use it on a production website, so that takes us back to using a transpiler like 6to5. So let's see, I'm just kind of winging it here, but so if you wanted to use 6to5, if you wanted to start writing ES6 code, what you would do is you would have a like a grunt task. Just like you have a grunt task for compiling your less files into CSS, you would have a grunt task for compiling your ES6 code down to ES5. And I haven't done all the research into which project it is that implements the grunt task to do 6to5, but it's out there for sure. So that's something that as an organization we can look at going forward. It's not quite as simple as you can use all of ES6 features now, because some of the features of ES6 aren't exactly transpilable into ES5. So any organization that's gonna move to ES6 needs to take a look at those issues and decide their stance on that kind of thing. Let's see, what else? Okay, one more thing. So one of the reasons that you're probably wondering, why the heck am I going to these meetings? I have been involved for a long time with the ES Discuss mailing list. So that goes back like 3 or 4 years probably. And I've done like quantitative analysis kind of things, and I'm just been generally interested and persistent and probably annoying to a certain extent. But I started working on proposals for the language, and actually have 2 that I'm pursuing at the moment. I didn't get too much time to formally talk about them at the last meeting because of all the ES6 wrap-up that was going on. But I did get to informally talk about these things with several of the members, and so I was able to make forward progress on them. So I'm just going to show you the 2 things that I'm currently working on. So this is me. So here's my 2 proposals, and they're still very early stages, but I'll be moving them forward as quickly as I can. But the first one is a function bind syntax. Now, I didn't come up with this. There was an existing strawman proposal out there, but I've taken this up and I finished the syntax specification for it, and I did a complete write-up for the algorithms, which is not a big deal. This is pretty simple, but basically you have this double colon operator, and instead of having to do things like this, okay, so here we have object prototype has own property, and I want to call it on this object. So I have to take out the function, and then I have to do call with obj as the this value. So that's annoying. And what you can do with this syntax, and I don't have it here. Instead, you could do something like so we have hasOwn here, and then let's make an object with a property x, And then we want to call obj has own x true. Good. So, and I'm just doing this on the fly, so I hope I type everything in correctly. And this syntax, and there's another variation on it as well. So let's say I have a method on this object, obj dot do it. So this method is just returning the x value on this object. So obj dot do it will give me the x value for that object. Sometimes you have like an event handler, and you want to extract a method and just pass it to the event handler. So you have to do something like I don't know, element dot add event listener. That's your event, and then you would do something like this. I have to bind. So that's how I would extract the method. I'd name the method, then I'd call bind on it and pass it to this value. So what I can do instead is I can use the double colon operator as a prefix operator, and I can just do obj do it. So that's a nicer way to do the same thing. And it also opens up the possibility, once you have this nice syntax for calling functions with a this value, with a known this value, it opens up some possibilities for different ways of delivering libraries. So a typical pattern in JavaScript is to use an adapter. So like jQuery is like an adapter. You pass in an element, or you query for elements, and then you have a bunch of methods. The jQuery object gives you a bunch of methods, and each one of those gives you another jQuery object, so you still have those methods. But this double colon operator kind of opens up the possibility to rethink that model in terms of what I call virtual methods. So here you can see, let's say that find and HTML are what I call virtual methods. So they're methods, but they're not attached to any particular object. So so here I'm getting a bunch of divs, and then just like jQuery does, I'm gonna find all the paragraphs in that div. But I don't have to wrap it in an adapter in order to do it. I could just call, using the double colon thing, I could just call this quote virtual method here, and then here I'm replacing the HTML of those paragraphs with ha 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 ha. So it opens up some interesting possibilities. Most people that I talk to think this is a really cool thing to do. I haven't had much like, huh, what's that? With that one. Now the other one that I'm championing is class private state. So I'm just going to briefly, I'll just show what it looks like. And this one actually, there's some interesting overlap with what other people want to do with JavaScript and types. So there's a lot of talk about type JavaScript going on right now. But basically, this proposal provides a way for you to define a class that has private internal state. And I think I'm gonna leave off right there. If you want, it would be, if you think either of these things are cool, then you might want to go out there and star the repository. Like I said, I hate the whole GitHub star thing. I'm not a social creature, but people like it when they see a bunch of stars. So if you think any of these are cool and you would like to see them in the language, go ahead and start. And I think I'm going to stop right there. And by the way, thanks for letting me blab on and on. And does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
That was great, Kevin. Could you post a link to that repo so that we can all start and make you a popular social creature.
Wonderful. Just what I always wanted. Will do.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I mean, personally, I'm blown away. That was a lot, and I think it's awesome that you're passionate about something you love, and you've explored it to that level, and here you are, you're doing great things with it. So I want to see get some feedback from the rest of the group and see if they had any questions. I know there are many comments to be had. You went over some examples. You went over E6, E5, and some of your GitHub repositories and some proposals that you're working on. So yeah, what do you guys think?
I'm always impressed with Kevin's the rigor and depth of Kevin's engagement with bleeding edge JavaScript.
Thanks, Paul.
Start it up.
So how about you, Tim? You're like a JavaScript enthusiast yourself, and you were going to give a presentation like next week time as you get some more stuff. So what's your impression of what Kevin talked about?
I actually got in a little bit late, and I was trying to see if I could pull together my own presentation here. But from what I've seen, past discussions, it looks really cool. I would love to see, especially the colon operator land in the language. That would be really nice.
Cool. Yeah, it's. I'd be interested to see what people think about transpiling ES6 to ES5. I mean, I'm not. I write all my own personal stuff, of course. I like writing ES6, and I've been doing that for a while with my own transpilers or whatever. But I could definitely see some benefits to that, and some not risks, but just like it would be like a plunge to take. It'd probably be a good plunge, but yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation to have.
Kind of curious with all the work that you've been doing with the S6. What's your favorite feature that's coming into the language?
I'd probably have to say arrow functions because they give such it's a really simple feature and it has a huge bang for the buck. And also I like it because since, like I was mentioning, that I've done like quantitative analysis stuff back before arrow functions were like in the spec. I did some. I wrote a program that scanned JavaScript and looking for functions that would basically benefit from an arrow syntax, and then I made a spreadsheet and posted that spreadsheet, and people looked at it, and it actually helped them make an educated guess about how useful that feature would be. So yeah, probably that. Just the bang for the buck on it's really great. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Who's next?
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I'm not sure if Derek is going to join. I know that John just kind of dropped off, but we may have some more questions for you, Kevin, but that's really awesome. So in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started with you, Paul. You can go ahead and take it away.
All right, great. I'll grab the screen, and this is pretty brief. This is another one in the series of sort of give a window into what I'm working on that somebody else might never have touched. Because when I first saw this, when I joined the Interaction team, it was all new stuff to me, and a lot of sort of domain knowledge that I had to acquire. And so I just want to spread a little bit around. And so I'm going to share this window that has a few tabs. I'll flip through. I don't have slides, but you'll get the gist. I'm sharing this hunk of code here just because this is sort of our starting point for some of the work we're doing on the Interaction team right now. I call my talk something like "What the heck is DTM," which is a term that if you start working with metrics, you're going to be hearing a lot and increasingly. And so, where does this come from? Well, ads pay the bills. First of all, that's where CMG is getting its money, is from advertisers on its many properties. And metrics are what sell the ads. You can tell someone that so many, 1,000 or million people see this page or that, and we've done things down to the level of instrumenting our AJAX calls on our photo galleries so that every fifth flip can have an ad interstitial put into it, and that we can tell the vendors how many people are seeing those things. So we love metrics. They let us sell ads, and the ads pay the bills. And metrics are a pain in the butt because there's so many vendors. There's so much code copied and pasted at all kinds of different standards. There's so much churn. Vendors change. Vendors acquire other vendors. They change their names. They update their products. The contracts change, and we get new features or lose features. And what this boils down to for developers is we have to keep the code in the sites up to date so that it is firing off the right stuff and collecting the right data for our vendors. Because remember, this is all stuff that's being collected by vendors and then reporting back to us. It's not like we're, just scraping our web logs and generating stuff that way. There's a lot more to it. And so this is all code that has to be in the template layer, and it's changing all the time. And so you think of every little change like that has to go through development, QA, code review, tie, deploy, and all the usual stages. And it can be really a lot of overhead for what amount to pretty simple code changes, because nobody wants to break prod. So it's a pain in the butt. What's the solution? The solution is first let me just dwell on the problem for a little bit, because I have this thing that you're only seeing the first 20 lines of this 200 lines of analytics. This is the analytics block from current AJC homepage. So this is what's in every page. It's doing, I think, most of the lifting for analytics for the page. And some of this is static stuff it's pasted in that's gotten from the vendor. A lot of it's dynamically generated. There's a lot of JavaScript that's generating properties that are needed. There's template variables that are supplying things like what category a page is in or that sort of thing. And it's all stuff that the metrics people want to see in their dashboards so that they can report on the right aspects of our traffic. So here's all this giant hunk of junk, but we want to be able to manage that in a way that doesn't require so much, doesn't have to be in our normal code flow when it maybe just analytics needs to update JavaScript variable because their vendor told them to update it. And so Adobe has this product, and I'll show you the web page, not because it's informative, but just because to show you that it's real. They call it Dynamic Tag Management. The word tag means something funny here. I think it means hunk of code. But what it boils down to is this little sentence right here. Manage an unlimited number of Adobe and third-party tags, i.e. hunks of code. So the upshot is this gives our metrics people a dashboard to turn on and off whatever aspects they want of the metrics code, including adding new vendors, removing old vendors, updating code, all that stuff that I was grousing about us having to push through our development flow. But they can do it from their dashboard, and Adobe's software controls it all and is the engine that's pushing out the actual code that we include. And so we started this work in the interaction team, and just to give an example, here's a recent code review that added what we're calling the DTM header and footer code. This is what Adobe needs in the page in order to do their thing with it. And there's not much there. The main payload here is this site setting DTM header code. So literally the code that Adobe wants is coming in via site setting. So again, something that the metrics folks can edit in the Medley admin and does not require developer intervention, does not require a deploy process, does not require changing our template files. And this, because Adobe has all the management tools for all this, then they can work with this at the granularity that they need without us having to either invent tools or repeatedly do a pretty tedious process to do something that's, amounts to one-line changes all over the place. So we're doing a lot of feature flagging right now of our legacy analytics, because they're all going to be flipped off eventually in preference to this, because they can all be included in this via the Adobe tools. So that's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to give a gist of when you start hearing DTM in the context of metrics, what it means. It means it's a tool that lets our analytics people control what code is going in the pages that reports back to them, so that they can do it on the fly and do it at their speed without having to do code deployments, and it frees us up to do other fun things on the development side. So that's that. If there are any questions, they're welcome. Otherwise, I'm happy to pass the mic.
All right, thanks, Paul. You are the last presenter, so we can kind of take our time and ask questions here. See if anyone has questions.
I have a question. So in the old way of doing metrics, there were a lot of times when you would fire off a metrics event or something, like, I don't know, in response to something happening on the page, as opposed to it all going through page load. So with DTM, is that all programmed into the, how do you do that with DTM?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, it is in there. It's something they call DDO actions. They have a data object that we're building in the page that contains static stuff like what kind of content it is, what's the path, etc. And there's a whole slew of JavaScript properties that come along with every page in the DTM world. There's also something they call DDO actions, which are what you're talking about. Something like someone clicked on the next picture button in the gallery, or somebody clicked on a like button in the Facebook widget, or any number of little things that are basically clicks. And those are all currently many of them are instrumented, and we're just going to translate that over to the DDO action so that there will be similarly sort of one-stop shop. But yeah, we still have a lot of that stuff that's responding real-time events, not just page loads.
Yeah, so Paul, I had a question too. Like, how does DTM differ from other metrics terms you hear thrown around, like Site Catalyst and Omniture?
It's basically designed to be both. Adobe's kind of trying to own it all, because they bought Omniture, I think. They have analytics tools proper, but then they also have this, which is sort of a analytics tool management tool, and so it can turn on or off. It can include Site Catalyst code in your page, or App Measurement, or Omniture, or any number of these other vendors, because you get to, as a user, you get to say what goes into the page. But it's not just another tool in that it's designed to manage a whole hunk of code in your page. And I don't know much about what the reporting looks like, but I think does some aggregation on the reporting end that makes it an appealing front end versus just another one of many vendors who are reporting data back on the page. So you have to ask someone like Jennifer White in Metrics to give you more of sort of why it's going to make her life better, because I'm pretty sure she would say it is and would have a good detailed answer.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? All right, awesome. So we do have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly talk about something. It's related to something our project is working on. I was thinking about talking about a feature that I just did, but I'm going to talk about some documentation that we're doing, and if you guys are interested in learning about the newspaper team and some of the features, I wanted to show you this. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you know what, I'm going to turn my camera on. I'm a little scared because Burns was talking about kids being snatched by poltergeists, because there are some open cabinets. And I was looking at my cabinets, and they don't they don't seem to be open, so he must have been talking about Kevin's cabinets, but I don't know. So I'm going to share my screen and entire screen. Yep, that looks good. Present to everybody. Yep. Come on, come on. Okay, nice. All right, let me know if you can see my screen.
I can see it.
All right, perfect. So we have a page on the wiki called Newspaper. Newspaper program, you just type in newspaper and you can find it. And this has helpful information like the time of our stand-ups, the employees in our team, and most importantly, we've been working on a documentation section. And this is pretty important to us because we had a lot of we ramped up with a lot of contractors like Eldarian, Terminal Labs, CSE, Cactus Group to help us build our site very, very quickly. And not just our site, I'm referring to like the redesigned version of the site. So some contractors are, well, most of them, not sure how long they're staying, but some of the contracting service, or the contracting service has kind of ended. Like I'm specifically speaking about Mutual Mobile. We found out in the stand-up that those guys are probably going to start looking at another project. But with that in mind, we were like, oh, we have to get these things documented so we can maintain them. So we do have a documentation page here. So you'll see a list of features, and you'll see helpful things about it, like what's the status of the documentation, what team it belongs to. It's either Wired, that's what we're calling the desktop team, and we have a team for MDOT. We also have the SME, subject matter expert, and who's actually working, or the owner of that documentation. As in version 1, they would call it owner. So there's a vendor-related section of the documentation, which is features that are powered by our vendors and feeds. You can see all of that here. And then we have Medley-related documentation. So these are features that don't necessarily depend on vendors to power them. So taxonomy would be a good example. Breaking news story cards. We don't necessarily have to get information from outside sources to power them. So I don't know. I think it's about the the free site documentation for the Wired team is about 80% complete. We're trying to finish it by next sprint. A lot of the documentation that needs to be done is for the MDOT site. So there's a lot of stories being created to get that done. And looking at the SMEs here, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Jason Munson, the director of the newspaper program, made it a priority for the business to fill half of the sprint with documentation cards, and he would like to see this page completed by mid-February. So you go here mid-February and expect all of this documentation to be completed. And I don't know if you guys remember, maybe a few months ago, I sent out a link to a document, and it had some points on there, or some sections that we would like to have filled out. I was trying to create a template, a documentation template. So, for example, there were some common questions that we definitely wanted to know about documentation. So, trying to develop a spec, documentation spec. I should have had Kevin Smith kind of help me out on this type of spec. But we have overviews. What's the status of it? Setup configurations, like if it has site settings or feature flags or any type of configurations needed to set it up. We have mockups. We have so more mockups here. We have unit tests, the technical architecture, like the specific code needed and how it's architected, which is really, really helpful. We have troubleshooting sections here. And we have ops information, related tickets, caching, logging, library. So as you can see, we're trying to be pretty thorough with this, and it's a really good knowledge base for us. And I guess I would encourage other teams to do it too. So I know that we have a few people from the Engage team, Ben Matthews and Tim Willis and Kevin Smith here, and if someone was like, hey, I wonder what those guys are working on, or what feature set they support, it'd be nice to kind of go to something like this and you kind of get a snapshot of all of those things. So for example, things to do, this weather, traffic, these are all of the features we kind of worked on last year, from the beginning of last year. February, because we moved over around that time. So I think that's all I wanted to say on it. So we're just filling out the documentation. It should be done mid-February. Are there any questions on that?
I've got a small question with that.
Sure.
So
hey, James.
I'm actually working on the Bright Cove NDN stuff for mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Documentation for that. What do we do with I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's not exactly Bright Cove per se, as far as the templates are concerned, but it's more of like the back-end architecture, because it's powered by Monocle, technically. Where would we put that? Is there a documentation page we should be filling out for Monocle, or should I kind of embed that, hey, if you need to add extra information for the Bright Cove templates, this is the Python file you need to put it into. Where would you suggest putting things like that? That's not directly, it is, but it isn't.
It is, but it isn't. I would still put it in the same source in the same NDN page, and then you can put, and it's possible that you might not see a section for it in here, and it sounds like in your case you don't. So you could put it in here, and you can say related information. You can go here. It can be a link, or it can be a section describing that Monocle information. But yeah, you will have someone else like that where we do have to create put custom information in there. For example, there's a Santa Pets page, and as you can see, it's still empty. There's a reason for that, because most people don't even know it exists. Most people don't even know it exists. But I know, like, here's a template for it, and most of the stuff probably won't even apply. So yeah, that's a really good question, James. Does anybody else want to add to that? And okay, and then we're also doing code reviews, because we noticed that some documentation was kind of filled out, and it I don't know, I guess there was still some documentation left to be desired after looking at it. So, I mean, as you can see here, there's really no screenshots or anything, and this is elections. This was a really, really big feature. So we wanted to kind of enforce some standards and kind of have it signed off by our peers. So we decided to do some code reviews to kind of make sure our documentation needs are met and up to standards. Okay, any other comments or questions? I'm going to check IRC one last time too for the ghost. You've probably seen some ghosts in my house. I saw a kitchenware flying in the background. Sorry. Plates levitating. Yeah, that definitely sounds like my house. Well, yeah, judging from the questions or comments, you know, it's Friday, and I know you guys are ready to get out of here, so I really appreciate you joining. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thanks everyone.